The chandelier's light caught the amber liquid in his glass as Walter raised it high above the reception crowd. "To Rhiannon," he announced, voice cutting through the ballroom's soft music, "who will finally have a stable family." His smile sharpened as his gaze found me. Something her sister could never provide. 200 guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My sister's face drained of color as her new father-in-law's words landed like physical blows. The crystal champagne flute in my hand suddenly felt as heavy as concrete, pressing into my palm with impossible weight. Behind me, someone whispered, "Who invited her anyway?" The question hovered in the air like the dust that had once filled my lungs as I'd stood watching ambulances at the mine entrance 17 years ago. "My name is Paula, I'm 37 and a civil engineer. This is the story of how I reconstructed justice from the ruins of deception." For 2 decades, I'd carried both grief and a sister who never knew the truth. Our parents never came home that night, buried under tons of rock when the Harrington Mining Company's unsupported tunnels collapsed. The official report called it an unfortunate natural disaster. The document I'd stolen from a distracted secretary's desk told a different story, approved for cost reduction measures. W. Harrington. The ballroom of the Aspen Grand Hotel glittered with wealth and privilege. Every surface reflected light, crystal glasses, diamond jewelry, the snow-capped mountains visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. I sat at the farthest table, watching my sister Rhiannon in her white gown, her smile brittle as she clutched her new husband's hand. Nolan Harrington looked nervous, whispering something in her ear that made her nod mechanically. I hadn't planned to confront Walter today. The investigation was already underway, federal authorities examining the evidence I'd spent years gathering. But his toast shattered my restraint. "Mr. Harrington," I said, my voice carrying despite its quietness. The room fell silent. "Do you even know what stability costs?" Walter's smile faltered for just a moment before returning, sharper and colder. "Ah," he said with mock surprise. "The sister speaks." I didn't respond, instead watching his phone light up on the table. His eyes flickered to the notification, and I saw the precise moment his confidence cracked. Denver Daily Investigations, Harrington Mining investigation reopened. Conversations resumed around us, but the damage was done. Walter excused himself abruptly, phone pressed to his ear. "The night my parents died still haunts me in fragments." The bitter cold as I stood behind the chain-link fence. The wail of sirens cutting through mountain air. The mine supervisor's grim face as he shook his head. No survivors in Shaft 7. At 17, I became both orphan and guardian to my 8-year-old sister overnight. The newspaper headline next morning proclaimed, "Natural quake causes tragic mining accident." I knew it was a lie. The whispers among the miners confirmed it. The roof gave in. The beams weren't reinforced. But Harrington Mining paid generous settlements that bought silence and closed investigations. While my classmates attended college parties, I worked construction jobs to pay rent on our small apartment. At night, I helped Rhiannon with homework, feeding her on noodles and reassurances. "Mom and Dad would be so proud of you," I'd tell her, never mentioning how they really died. She didn't need that burden. I saved enough to put myself through engineering school, specializing in structural integrity, learning precisely how foundations fail and how to prevent it. Each calculation, each test, each certification was a step toward the truth. I built bridges by day and dismantled Harrington's lies by night. When Rhiannon texted me last year, "Paula, Nolan proposed. You'll love his family." My hands shook so badly I dropped the phone. She had no idea she was marrying into the family responsible for our parents' deaths. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. My first dinner at the Harrington estate confirmed everything I suspected. Walter's mansion perched on the same ridge that overlooked the collapsed mine. In his study hung a family portrait with that mountain range as backdrop, a daily reminder of his triumph over accountability. "A civil engineer?" Walter had asked that night, swirling his wine. "So you build things that eventually collapse?" His words were casual, but his eyes held challenge. I met his gaze steadily. "Only when someone removes the supports." His smile froze briefly before returning, thinner than before. We both knew what I meant. Nolan seemed oblivious to his father's past, earnestly showing me around the estate, telling me how excited Rhiannon was about the wedding. "Dad's paying for everything," he said proudly. "He even set up a trust for us." I nodded, saying nothing about the investigation I'd already initiated. For years, I'd been gathering evidence, maintenance records showing neglected safety protocols, financial documents revealing diverted funds, witness statements from former employees. 2 weeks before the wedding, my persistence finally paid off. "If this checks out, it's homicide," wrote Lennox, the investigative journalist who'd become my ally. His message arrived alongside evidence that Walter was repeating his past mistakes, cutting corners on a new mining operation called Rocky Ridge Extension. That afternoon, Rhiannon called in tears. "Why did you talk to a reporter about Walter's company? Nolan says there are rumors." "I'm not ruining anyone," I replied carefully. "I'm rebuilding what they broke." She hung up, leaving a crater of silence between us. Hours later, Lennox sent another message: "Follow the money." $3.2 million vanished from an environmental safety fund to an offshore account. Our parents had died for $3 million. The wedding weekend arrived with fresh snow blanketing Aspen. I stayed in my assigned guest room at the resort, reviewing the final pieces of evidence. Tomorrow, when Walter raised his glass, the federal investigation would go public. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Rhiannon stood at my door in her silk robe, face pale with anxiety. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "Walter's worried. Nolan's scared. Tell me this is all just a misunderstanding." "It's not," I said gently. "Tomorrow isn't about hate. It's about truth." Her lip trembled. "But truth hurts." "So does every reconstruction," I replied. "The foundation has to be exposed before it can be rebuilt properly." She turned away without another word, closing the door between us, both knowing it might be the last time we spoke as sisters. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, another knock came at my door. This time it was Nolan, his face ashen. "I found documents in my father's study," he whispered. "Forged signatures, mine and Rhiannon's, authorizing illegal transfers. He's been laundering money through the wedding expenses." "You were never supposed to know," I told him. "Tomorrow, stay silent. Let the ground collapse on its own." After he left, I stood before the mirror, studying my reflection, dark circles under determined eyes. "I was 17 when the ground fell once," I murmured. "Tomorrow will be the last time." Morning arrived with brilliant sunshine reflecting off fresh snow. The ballroom filled with guests, champagne flowed, and cameras flashed. At precisely 1:45 p.m., Walter straightened his tie, lifted his glass, and smiled at the crowd. "To Rhiannon and Nolan. May your marriage stand stronger than some foundations we've seen before." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Rhiannon's shoulders stiffened. Nolan looked down. I rose slowly from my chair, the light catching the silver of my dress. "You talk about foundations, Mr. Harrington," I said clearly. "But do you even know what keeps the ground stable?" He smirked. "An engineer's lesson, is it?" "You built your empire on hollow ground," I replied. "I'm here to make sure it collapses." His phone buzzed. Behind him, the wedding slideshow screen flickered, now displaying headlines: "Harrington Mining under federal investigation." Documents, transfers, signatures, his crimes laid bare for all to see. "You used my name for this." Nolan shouted at his father. Walter said nothing, face drained of color. Rhiannon began to cry. I stepped forward. "My parents died because you chose profit over safety. Today, truth weighs more than your gold." I turned to my sister. "Walk away, Rhiannon," I said softly. To my surprise, she took Nolan's hand, and they left together. Walter slumped in his chair, wine spilling across white linen like blood. Cameras clicked. By morning, that photo would be on every news site in the country. 1 week later, rain traced silver lines down my apartment window. The TV murmured, "Walter Harrington detained by federal authorities following the release of incriminating evidence." The second FBI confirmed multiple accounts under investigation. I turned it off, letting silence fill the room. On the table sat my father's old drafting pencil. "They finally saw what you saw, Dad," I whispered. My door burst open. Rhiannon stood there, eyes swollen from crying. "You destroyed Nolan's family," she accused. "You humiliated us." "No, Rhiannon," I said quietly. "I stopped pretending your happiness wasn't built on lies." She threw a newspaper onto the table. Walter in handcuffs stared back at us. "You could have told me the truth years ago. Would you have listened?" We looked at each other, love and grief wrestling until neither could win. My phone rang, Lennox, with news. It's done. The trust's been reinstated. The company will rebuild under a new name, Peyton Memorial Fund. Then the ground finally holds, I said. Months passed. One evening, a message appeared on my phone. I finally understand. You didn't destroy us. You rebuilt us. Thank you for giving me something solid to stand on. I smiled, small, quiet. The first real smile since the mine collapsed. A year later, the old mine had become a memorial garden. Wild grass covered what once was rubble. A marble monument stood where my parents had died, Peyton Memorial Trust. Built from truth. I knelt before it, placing white lilies on the stone. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of new earth. Taking my father's drafting pencil from my pocket, I etched a small line beneath the engraving, "Build to last." Footsteps approached behind me. Lennox asked, "Do you regret it?" "No," I replied, still looking at the stone. "You can't rebuild without breaking first." He handed me an envelope from Rhiannon. Inside, her handwriting flowed steady and sure. "I'm naming our daughter Paula, after you. I want her to know what true foundation means." My eyes stung as I folded the letter gently. "Then the name will stand strong." As I walked away, sunrise spilled gold over the mountains. Snow melted, water tracing clean paths through the soil. Earth reborn. They called it revenge. I called it restoration.